Next up, longtime media veteran David Levy joins SBJ's John Oran to talk about Levy's new position as advisory board chairman of Antbox, owner of the New York Subliners Call of Duty League team and the New York Excelsior Overwatch League team. Both will discuss Levy's goals for the organization and what attracted him to the esports space.
David, thank you for joining us. It's good to see you again.
John, always a pleasure being with you, my friend.
Hey, before we jump into it, you have to explain your office. What do I see in the background there?
Oh, that's an oldie but a goodie. That's from Poipu Bay, Hawaii. It's a flag from the Grand Slam Cup. And the message on that, or the tagline, used to be the hardest tournament to qualify for because you had to be a winner of the 4 majors to qualify. It was a great event. We ran it with Joe Steranka for many years, and then Pete Lavacqua, who's now over at NBC. The tournament no longer exists, but at the time it was a lot of fun, and I got to meet a lot of the pros at that event. It was really a special event.
Oh, that's great. I know golf is one of your passions. Esports is another one of your passions. You and I have covered you and interviewed you for decades now, David. And I remember.
Don't make me feel so old.
I feel old. I look old. I look older than you. But I recall you would evangelize about esports before I had any sort of concept of what it is. Do you recall when it first sort of came into your thinking?
I do. It was actually back in 2015 when I was at Turner, and it really came to be when my son, my younger son, Jake Levy, was in his room behind closed doors. I knocked on his door and he wasn't answering. I knocked on his door again. I broke into his room and there he was on his computer with his headphones on. And I kind of went up to him and startled him a little bit. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he says, I'm watching videos of people, playing video games. And I said, "What do you mean you're watching video?" I go, "How stupid is that? You're watching somebody else play a video game?" And he goes, "Dad, you go to hockey games all the time and watch professionals play hockey. What's the difference?" And I said, all right. And I sat on his bed and watched him interact with this, platform called Twitch. I didn't even know what Twitch was at the time. And there he was screaming like a fan with his friends when they went, something would happen on the video game and he would lean back in his chair and he'd do all sorts of things. That next morning, I went into Turner and talked to our business development guys and asked them to let me understand what Twitch was, what this esport phenomenon is, and how do we get involved. And a month later, they came back with a big pile of how we could get involved. Could we be an IP owner? Could we be a team owner? Could we be a scheduler? What could we do in this business? And of course, we weren't going to buy teams and we certainly weren't going to buy the IP, but we launched Esports, or ELeague was what the league was. We launched ELeague at Turner in 2016, believe it or not, on a Friday night on TBS. And I think it's still running on Friday. It was a joint venture at the time, although I think Turner bought out IMG at the time, but it was a joint venture between IMG and ourselves. We committed for 2 years of primetime programming on Friday night, not even knowing what it would do. And built a studio in Atlanta and held competitions. And we held competitions really for Counter-Strike, but we also, believe it or not, which is one of the teams I'm involved with now, Overwatch. We ran the Overwatch series before they started franchising them out in the United States. So it was a great, process for me to kind of understand the business and really understand the demographics, which are incredible. The esport demographic are so young, 18 to 24, 18 to 34, and obviously 13-year-olds as well. And it just kept rising. Whether it's a TV product or not, that was still be determined. This is really a digital play, but it has had some success on television. But I don't know if it's long-standing success. The tables are still questionable on whether TV is the outcome for this.
Well, I know when you did launch it, the first measure of success that I looked for were the TV ratings, and they were a Friday night at 10 o'clock without going after young kids. They weren't going to be big, but you would point me to
the demos were great. Yeah, the demos were fantastic. Mm-hmm. The ratings, a household rating, as you and I would be, how it would rank against, NBA or NFL or Major League Soccer and things of that nature. There were some times where it did hit those smaller numbers, some baseball numbers and some, some soccer numbers, but the demos were very, very heavily weighted 18 to 34. Now, the question is really going to be down the road, 18 to 34-year-olds are leaving the TV set. I mean, they're just abandoning it. And rightfully so. They're on the streaming products. They're on all different ways. They're playing games, right? They're in the esports, right? So can that bring them back to television? Big question mark is, can you draw them back to something they don't normally do? They do come back for the Super Bowl. They do come back for big events. So if there's a big tournament event, I think they would come back. My time over in Brooklyn, we ran 2 esporting events at the Barclays Center, and 100% sellout in tickets. So we know there's a passion for it. We know there's fandom for it, and it's growing like a weed.
Let's go back to ELeague for a second. What are some of the things that you learned from that?
Well, we learned that the demographics were great. We learned that it can actually work on TV, although 90% of ELeague's competition was on Twitch and on digital space. But I also learned that you got to build brands. And just like the Olympics do such a good job in storytelling, I think one of the things that's missing right now in esports is the storytelling of who the players are, who the athletes really are. Where do they come from? What happens when they turn 28? How are they, how do they train? And so forth. I think that story still needs to be brought out, because there's sort of a mystery unless you're a diehard fan. And there are diehard fans. The question is, can you build from that in a larger base? And can you build out those bases and those brands? I think that's the learning process. And that's sort of where we're leaning towards now with Andbox.
Well, storytelling is what is going to help it become more of a TV property. But beyond storytelling, what would you have done differently? I mean, you're sitting here. I love interviewing now that you're no longer with Turner, because now you can actually be frank about it instead of.
I don't think I ever hid my. I always wear my heart on my sleeve. You know that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know exactly what I would do different at the time, because we didn't own the IP and we didn't own franchises. And I would tell you, one of the things that attracted me to Andbox and where I am today is the fact that, if you really think about it, the world's getting smaller and smaller, right? That, because of the internet and because of how we communicate around the globe today. And brands are becoming global brands, and there are global sports. And I think there's really going to be 4 global sports as we move down the path. One is soccer, which is already global, but is actually the place that was really missing in that global footprint was the United States. And I think the United States is truly catching up now in the love of soccer. And I remember even doing the UEFA deal for BR Live for Turner. And that was one of the reasons, because we saw the growth in European soccer and soccer in general in the United States. And it was finally coming from, hey, the high school people loving soccer to actually, fans of soccer as grownups. The second one is NBA or basketball. I think basketball is truly a global sport and is only going to become bigger and bigger on that stage as we become smaller and smaller with technology. The third is someone maybe not really thinking about is combat sports, whether it's UFC, martial arts, boxing. That's truly a global sport and will always be a global sport. And lastly, the one that's the last slot is esports. And I really believe those will be the 4 major global sports over the next 20 years. And to get in to Andbox at this stage of the game, if you truly believe that they're going to be one of the 4 major global sports, and the US is going to be a big platform for that, why not be involved in the New York marketplace, the largest demographics and population in the country, and own a franchise and be part of a franchise in the largest state of the country and the largest, television market and the largest media market. So having that capability, owning that franchise, and I truly believe has been underserved. The New York market has been underserved from an esports perspective. And so that was very interesting for me to get involved, build that brand, and be a part of it.
which is so unique because you're talking about esports as a global sport, which of course it is. You look at any of the viewership or user figures, of course it's global. But with Ambox, you're almost making a more of a localized play there in order to take advantage of it being global.
Well, what we're doing is we're taking advantage of a franchise in the biggest market. And, if it is going to be global, you wouldn't just like to own the Lakers, even though the Lakers is in LA, you still know the Lakers brand is a global brand, right? And it's part of the NBA and it's part of basketball. And if you have the best players in the world playing for the Lakers, we hope to have the best players in the world playing for the Subliners or so forth, one of our teams for Call of Duty. But it also gives you different kind of opportunities to also market other different brands. So for example, we have our own tournaments in New York. One of them is called Battle of the Boroughs. And that's not even one of our brands. It's not Call of Duty. It's not Overwatch. It's not Valorant. It's actually Fortnite. And Fortnite actually comes in and asks us to host these tournaments. We have a package that we're able to host Fortnite tournaments for them. And they pay us to do it. And so we become the experts in the New York market for all brands, for all IP, not just the teams and franchises that we own. And then you think about this, which I really think is going to be very interesting, is when you get down to betting and when esports becomes a true betting opportunity, which it is. It's very small right now in sports books. They're mostly concentrating on football and soccer and things of that nature. But this demographic wants to bet on this sport. And as it becomes more of a prevalent thing in the market in New York, I know it's in New Jersey, and as you learn how to bet on these sports, because it is a teaching process, I think that's a huge opportunity as well, and certainly for Ambox.
David, you've been on the record as saying that you think an esports franchise could go for up to about $1 billion.
At some point.
Number one, is that hyperbole? And number two, how do you get there?
Well, obviously not $1 billion today, right? Look at anything. Look at the NBA franchises. Way back when were $50-60 million, and now they're selling for $2.4 billion, and rightfully so. They built that brand into a global brand. I think that some of these big name franchises, and I don't want to start naming them all, but there are a few that are selling in the $200-400 million range right now, which no one even thought they would get to that level. Now, there are many teams. Once you own a brand, that doesn't mean you just Cloud9. I'll give you one team in the U.S., a U.S. team. Cloud9 probably has 6 different teams within its Cloud9 brand. There's a Cloud9 brand that probably plays Counter-Strike. There's a Cloud9 brand that probably plays, League of Legends and things of that nature. So each of these brands contain teams that play different sports or different esport games. And so when you roll all of the teams up under that specific brand, and it's a marketable brand and a brand that wins, there's value there. And someone will buy that team for merchandising, for marketing capabilities, for sponsorship capabilities. And remember, the demographics on these things are huge. If you're trying to reach that young, affluent male audience, this is the place to go. There's not a lot of places to capture that audience. That audience is going away from traditional television and certainly traditional ways to market to them. And that's why digital advertising has become so big, and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, because that's where they are. But they're also playing games. And one of the things that's very interesting, John, and I think you've seen a lot of the facts and figures, COVID accelerated a lot of things in life, right? It accelerated probably JCPenney's demise. But did anybody think JCPenney's was going to be around for the long term? Did anybody think Hertz rent a car? I mean, when was the last time anybody rented a car at an airport? There's Uber, right? So what that did is accelerated what was already happening. Did anybody think that Amazon was not a great company? No, it got accelerated. That's just basically what happened. And two things are going to get accelerated because they were already growing pre-COVID, but now they're going to continue to grow faster. One is esports and gaming. It's been growing like crazy during COVID because it's stay at home and so forth, but people are now playing the game competitively and playing competitions against each other. And the second is sports betting. Sports betting is going to grow. And certainly as all these states that are going to have to approve betting on a market by market basis for their budgets of the states, because the budgets were being used for COVID and they need taxable dollars in some way, shape, or form, you're going to see approval. And you saw it during the voting process this last election that any state that had betting on its ballot went through. So sports betting is going to be very prominent. Esports is going to be very prominent. It's going to continue to grow. And I think the two combined is going to make the valuation, going all the way back to your question, how do you evaluate and how do these things become billion-dollar franchises? That's the way they do it.
David, you give such great answers. I forgot what my question was already. Hey, you're talking about the acceleration of trends. You used to be the head of Turner, overseeing a host of cable networks, a streaming service in BR. What are you learning from the media business in terms of the trends that are accelerating?
Consumption habits are completely changing. I think you're seeing in all the media companies today. My past, which is, have launched HBO Max, NBC launching Peacock, Disney launching ESPN Plus, and now they have Hulu and they have Disney Plus. All the media companies are moving to direct-to-consumer relationship, to have the data, to have the first-party data, to have that relationship and understand it and how to grow it. And I really believe that there is still going to be cord cutters and cord nevers and cord shavers. I don't believe it goes to zero. I think there'll probably be a plateau anywhere between 50 and 60 million cable subscribers, because there's still people that enjoy a bundled package at a price that is acceptable. And then they'll also have 1, 2, maybe 3 streaming products with it. And then there's the gaming business. I truly believe companies like Epic are figuring out that these gaming platforms are actually truly destinations. I think Travis Scott released one of his singles on an Epic game, Fortnite. Fortnite is going to be a destination just like Facebook. There's going to be places where you can DM people, talk to people, share content, go see wrestling matches, go to boxing matches within the Fortnite universe. Okay. Those are going to be destination platforms for consumers, as just where other platforms are as well. So I really, truly believe a huge change in viewership habits and consumption of content. And I think the media companies are working very, very hard to play catch up and rearrange their budgets and their directions. Sports, listen, it's going to be played forever. I'm a big believer, John, all the years we've hung out together. I'm still very bullish on the sports marketplace. I think the television business, the last destination programming left. People still watch sports on TV. They will continue to always watch sports on TV. And until some of these other platforms, whether it's Amazon or whether it's Apple Plus or whether it's HBO Max, until they have distribution at the size and level, and also daily, meaning immediate streaming distribution, meaning that they can actually accumulate an audience at a size that the leagues need. Remember, leagues need to market and promote the next generation of fans. They can't forget about the next generation. In order to reach the next generation, they have to reach them on platforms and things that they're watching. Right now, television is still the largest reach vehicle. Will that be 10 years from now? I don't know. Where else can they reach them? Where they're going. And I think the leagues are going to have to play in that in some way, shape, or form.
David, you're bullish on esports. You're bullish on sports in general. You're also bullish on tequila. What's going on with that?
Yeah, as I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, I invested in a tequila company called Quomos, Komos, and Superbird. They're one company. Superbird is a pre-mixed tequila drink, like a White Claw, and has been selling pretty well since September. And Cuomo just came out, I think it was last week. So we're just starting to market it. It's an añejo. It's got a Mediterranean Mexican feel to it. And I'm looking forward to having a couple of glasses with you.
I've had them before. No ice, nice and neat. David, always great to see you.
John, you're the best. Take care, and thanks for having me.
Take care. Thank you.